Hey, what's going on? We come to Savannah this afternoon. Going to be hanging out. It's early December. It's a really pleasant day. The sun's shining. I wouldn't say it's cold at this point by any means, but it's typical for South Georgia. Chilly in the mornings and then warms up in the afternoon. So our first stop here is at Hopatomica. It's a brew pub on the southeast side of town. They do a really nice job with beer and food. They have pizza and sandwiches, and it's just a really cool place to hang out in general. So we're just gonna show you what this looks like and walk you through. Great folks in here too behind the bar, so be sure to come in and check it out if you're in the area. Kind of their pizza kitchen back here. Brew house in the back. Plenty of seating. And a super nice bar. I believe they've do their own cocktails, or maybe they just steal. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it. Atomica. I stay away from the spirits myself, but a lot of people enjoy them. All right, so this is our first stop on the day, and we're gonna bring you some more stuff from up by the river, down through the center of town, through the squares, and down by Forsyth Park. Savannah is really nice and lots of history, and we'll share some information about that later today. All right, so we're doing some driving around, and we're kind of pressed for time a little bit, so
300 feet, turn right after Milan Days.
Wanting to get into the park before sundown, so we can get a pretty good view of that. But right now we're on Broughton Street, which is a lot of shops and restaurants. Yeah, it's a pretty cool place to hang out. I don't spend a lot of time down here. I usually walk south toward the south end of town, which is what we're going to do today. There is a really nice ice cream shop here that usually has a big line, no matter what time of year it is. Yeah, it's a cool place for sure. If you are in Savannah, Broughton Street is nice. There's a market that's not too far from here, like an open air market. And the squares, I mean, there's lots to see and do in Savannah for sure. Right now we're headed over to River Street, so we'll catch up in a minute. All right, so we're approaching that open air market area, which I'm not sure that I'm describing that correctly, but anyway, we're going around one of the squares here on our way to River Street. And there's a tour here that you can take on an open air bus that I would highly recommend if you come to Savannah. It's maybe 2 hours long. It's hop on, hop off. So I think you have like most of the day to kind of jump off in areas that you want to check out. There's definitely some tourist stuff here, of course, but the history, the buildings, the restaurants, there's just a lot here. You could easily spend a couple of days and then go over to Tybee Island another day. You know, I-95, you're on the coast, or really close to the coast here. So yeah, super nice. And okay, so we're on Bay Street now, and we're going south. River Street is to my left. We're going to try to to go to one end of it and then just turn back around and drive up River Street as best as we can. River Street's kind of a dive, in my opinion. Not that there's not some nice stuff there, but it's very touristy and just not my thing, but lots of people enjoy it. All right, I think we've come in the right way this time. I got Poe's Tavern here on my left, and Service Brewing is down here if you take a left here. This is like River Street access on the north or west side of town where you can drive. Going toward the JW Marriott. So yeah, here we go. This end is pretty new. They've done a lot of construction up here in the last 5 or 6 years, and it gets less new as you go south, or yeah, I guess it's south. Anyway, the river's over here to the left, which we'll try to get a little view of that, and just, you know, once it opens up. And I mentioned this was rough. Okay, here we go. Here's the Savannah Convention Center across the river. It's a new building that's been built in recent years. In fact, I think it's still under construction. I'm not sure what this is other than some kind of boat. But here's the older part of River Street. As you can see, there's plenty of tourists and shops and restaurants. It's you know, it's worth walking through, that's for sure. Every time I come here, I'm usually working, so I'm on kind of a tight schedule, which I am a little bit today. This filming is not my regular work. Maybe someday, but anyway, I feel like I'm a little bit rushed just because I want to get into the park before sundown, so you can kind of see what that looks like. Yeah, it's a nice walk. You do have to be mindful of where you're going in Savannah, as with any place, but Savannah can be a little sketchy if you get off on the wrong road. Yeah, I typically stay at the TRYP down here by Marriott, I think. It's usually got a good price, and it's kind of centrally located. You're not too close to the river or too far out away from anything. It's kind of a pretty good hub, but there's a lot of options here in town for lodging, of course. All right, I've gotten checked in and heading down toward the south side of town, over toward the park first. I'm going to walk through one of the squares that's just a couple of blocks away from the hotel, show you what that looks like, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I don't necessarily have details about the squares, but basically how the city was laid out a long time ago. All right, we've arrived at the first square. That's not, like I said, not too far from the hotel. This is Pulaski Square. I think most of these are live oak trees. I guess I've seen some form of live oak in California, but this is definitely a type of oak tree that is synonymous with the South, the deep South particularly, down into Florida and South Georgia and all along, I think, the Gulf Coast at least. But Anyway, there's lots of squares here. I think there's either 22 or 20. Maybe they used to be 22 and now there's 20. But I'll talk a little bit about that later on with some of the notes that I made before coming down. Yeah, we're gonna walk the streets for the most part till we get to the park. I guess technically we'd be on the sidewalk, but just show you some of the houses here and historical buildings. And there's lots of historical churches. Like I said, Savannah is supposedly the oldest city in the United States. So there's a lot going on here. All right, here's one of the old churches. We're at the back side of the building right now, but anyway, you get a pretty good idea of what that's like. Not sure what street we're on. I think maybe this will tell us here, but anyway, Oglethorpe Avenue is one of the main drags, and Liberty Avenue is lined with oak trees. Just absolutely beautiful. Not the alleys, but Oglethorpe and Liberty. There's tons of alleys here because it's just the way cities were built. And like I said a little bit ago, I'll talk about how this was not only the oldest city, I think, in the United States. There's some debate about that, but the first planned city in the United States. So here's another crossroad with bricks for the road. Townhomes and maybe even some regular homes. I don't know if you'll really be able to tell how all this was built, like historically and pieced together, and probably been not necessarily torn down, but redone, I would imagine, many times. If you can see all the brick structures and the architecture at the top, yeah, it's something that you may not be able to really see. But we'll just keep filming and see what we come up with, and hopefully we've got lots of interesting stuff to show you, which I know we will, and talk about. Maybe I can at least make it pretty interesting, do my best there. You have lots of streets like this one I just showed you in Savannah, where they've been redone, but there's also lots of things that have not been redone. It's got its, like anywhere I guess, it's got its really old and kind of run down things, and then really nice, and plenty of things in between as well. Here's another square. We're going to take a left and walk through this next square before going into Forsyth Park. It's I don't know, I think it's like a mile long, maybe. Pretty wide, borders a couple of streets, Whitaker and maybe Bull Street, I'm not sure. We'll take a look at that and show you what's there. Pulaski is I think a Revolutionary War guy, our leader that helped develop this territory, along with Oglethorpe. Here's a monument to Mr. Pulaski. Yeah, General Casimir Pulaski. Yeah. Lots of historical markers here. I think I've mentioned the history of Savannah, and the beauty of Savannah. It's such a unique place. I don't know how easy it is to see some of these homes and even businesses, but just some of them are really nice, really beautiful, really well done. Here's another one of the churches that we've walked by a few times. I come to this area 3 or 4 times a year. And happen to be back for December of 2025. Seems to be a bit of a construction project going on here at the church. And at this building here, next to one of the squares, one of the many squares. The oaks here have fern growing in the top of them. This is a humid environment most of the time. Spanish moss in the trees. All right, so I just crossed Abercorn and coming over here to Drayton. I'm on Gaston and coming up to the northern edge of Forsyth Park. Basically is a block wide, so you can walk down either side. I'm just going to take this closest side for now, and then we'll probably cross over a little bit later. All right, I'm walking into Forsyth Park now. Part of it there's a big walkway down the middle, not all the way to the end, but this is where people hang out when the weather's nice, and even like it's kind of a cool afternoon here, but it's pleasant, sun's shining, so I'm sure we'll see people hanging out a little bit. Here's a fountain that usually has water in it. I'm not sure if there's a project going on with it, or we got some cold weather, but I wouldn't think that would, cold weather coming, I wouldn't think that would affect something this size. Okay. Headed over here to one of the monuments in the park. I don't know if it's a centerpiece necessarily, but it's pretty large. All right, this is part of where the park opens up and becomes, there's not many trees except on the edge down along the 2 sidewalks. It's on both sides. All right, here's part of the statue and the monument here. Lafayette McLaws, Major General, Confederate States Army, born in Augusta, January the 15th, 1821, died in Savannah, July 24th, 1897. Looks like this is basically just a monument to the Confederate dead, 1861 to 1865. And this guy here, Francis S. Bartow, Colonel 8th Regiment, Georgia Volunteers, Confederate States Army, born in Savannah, Georgia, September 6, 1816, fell at Manassas, July 21st, 1861. There's houses on either side of the park, which there's a road in between the houses in the park on both sides, but yeah, houses and I guess townhomes. And as we go south, we'll certainly record that too, and lots of interesting buildings and architecture, and Savannah's got it all. All right, so here's another monument in the park. It says, "To the Georgians who volunteered and served their country in the Spanish-American War." There was lots of wars to get this place, and by this place I mean the United States established in the world. It's the history of the world. Everybody wants what somebody else has, and they're willing to fight for it, especially if they're desperate. Been to the White Whale Craft Ales, craft beer market a few times. It's a pretty young crowd in there typically, and they like to play games, and I don't want to say color, but whatever. Everybody's got their thing. But I'm headed down to Two Tides First, which is a brewery here. They also do coffee roasting, I believe, and their building is really interesting. I think it's an old dairy. That whole area, it was an old dairy, and it's completely urban at this point, so I'm sure the history of that's pretty fascinating. But it's kind of just a open space downstairs where they brew, and upstairs it's an old house. I don't know what the conversion was there, but we're going to show you around there. I'm going to sit down and read some of my notes about Savannah. I'm not going to get long-winded with it because there's so much here. I would never be able to cover it. I just have one page, and hopefully that'll be interesting. Here's Bull Street Baptist Church. It almost looks a little bit like a court, which is funny. And St. Paul's Greek Orthodox Church. You know, when I was in Winston-Salem the other week, there weren't near as many churches as there are like when you get into the deep south, especially a historical town. Really all towns, but like historical towns have these, or old towns have beautiful buildings, churches, and just all kind of beautiful buildings. But the churches can be really, really nice, at least outside. St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church. So you've got 1, 2, 3, And there's Bull Street Baptist Church. So that's tied to the first building. But anyway, that's 3 right here on, right, basically neighbors. All right, here's Bull Street Tacos. Have to admit, I've never been there, but it's always packed. Been here a long time, so I assume it's pretty good. Yeah, here we've been 1 block, and there's another church here. Let's see. Not really seeing which church it is, but yeah. Oh, here we go. Sacred Heart Catholic Church. That's one thing you'll find with Savannah. There's just all of a sudden there's a tattoo shop, a cafe. I have no idea what that is. Yeah, even after looking at it for, okay, part of the Foxy Loxy, I guess. And yeah, just a gingerbread house, the gingerbread house. Yeah, we're still on Bull Street, walking towards the south, and we got the library here across the street. I don't know if that's very exciting, probably not, but and also I guess another church next to the library. I've walked by this place many times, but never been in. They're usually pretty busy in the evenings. I think it's maybe not even 5 o'clock yet, so folks are probably just getting off work. Yeah, it's 4:42.
Good?
Yep. Got a couple of things here. This project on my right, it used to be part of a church, and someone has bought the church and put these 2 identical buildings on either side of it. I'm not sure if it's going to be like commercial in the bottom and maybe residential up top. That's kind of what it looks like it might be, but I think they've been working on it, construction project, for almost a couple of years maybe. The church here, I'll show you that, it was for sale for, gosh, probably 2 or 3 years. I'm sure they wanted a pretty penny for it. But before I do that, this is a place called the Vault. It used to be a bank. The Vault's in the back, so it's just a restaurant. I've had sushi there before and kind of traditional American food. I think they changed the menu a good bit, but it's a pretty cool place to hang out. It's always crowded in the evening. So here's the historical church. I think it was, I'm gonna not say this right, Anglican, before it became what it's gonna be, whatever it's gonna be. And here's the on the opposite side where they're building. I wonder what they're going to do with the old church. That'll be interesting to see what that turns into. So yeah, we're like I said, headed toward Two Tides Brewing. I think we're probably about 15 minutes away. So we're going to show you a few more things there and then kind of show you around Two Tides as well. All right, here's the old Savannah City Mission. Kind of can run into a little bit of a crowd hanging out around here, so I normally cut back over around 39th, off of Bull, back over to the next street. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I'm gonna go look. Never had any trouble, but I'm not big on crowds anyway. All right, this building right here behind me used to be really dilapidated. It is looking so much better. I'm not sure if it was part of the original group dairy or not, but we'll get upstairs and you can kind of look over into it, and yeah, this is completely different. So here's Two Tides Brewing. As you can see, it's kind of open on the bottom, where they do their brewing, and then you've got basically a house up top. This is a look into their brew house. It's not extremely tight, but it's yeah, a little crowded. All right, so Whitaker. Bull goes down one side of the Forsyth Park and Whitaker goes down the other side, and I usually walk down kind of both and just cut over around 39th. I'm going to show you this too, next to Two Tides, called Starling Yard. It's blocked off where you can't really look in, but I'll show you what it looks like when I walk up the stairs to Two Tides. Got my food truck here. Part of the reason for that is probably this place right next to them is a food truck park. It's pretty quiet right now, but usually there's a lot going on. Most of it is up toward the top there. So here's their beer board, basically. Mostly hazy on the IPAs, which is over here on the left. They got one West Coast that's not hazy. Fruited sours is definitely something that they always do in kind of a specialty. Over on this last board, you get a variety of items. I'm not seeing any stouts or imperial stouts over there right now, but that may be something that people aren't doing as much. I'm just going to walk you back through the old house. It's got little rooms off to the sides where people hang out. Definitely a cool spot, somewhere I always like to at least come out or stop by for at least a little bit. I've got a nice balcony out front here. You have to walk through this giant window, which you just open and then close when you come back in. Or I guess close when you go out. Anyway, it's hot in there, so we're gonna stay outside. All right, now that we've made it to Two Tides, I've got a few notes about Savannah. It's only one page, but just some interesting kind of the beginning of the history, which it's been started a long time ago. So anyway, Savannah was established in 1733, was the first city in the New Georgia colony, named after King George II of England. Founded by James Oglethorpe and 120 passengers, it was intended to be a new start for England's poor and a way to strengthen the colonies. Oglethorpe made a peaceful agreement with the local Yamakra chief, Tomochichi, allowing for the settlement to flourish without conflict. The city's original charter forbade rum, lawyers, and slavery for a time. So Planned City, I mentioned earlier that this was, it says it's considered America's first planned city, with a unique grid layout that features wide streets and public squares, which I showed you a few of those. Okay, there were original 24 squares, now there are 22. I think I mentioned the open air bus tour earlier that will take you around. Yeah, with a hop on, hop off, they'll kind of go through the squares and also go by significant buildings and give you a little bit of history. I think it's 2 hours if you stay on the bus the whole time, but definitely worth it. All right, so the Revolutionary and Civil War periods. It served as a strategic port city during the American Revolution. The British captured it in 1778 and held it until 1782. During the Civil War, it remained a strategic Confederate stronghold due to its port and cotton production. During the Civil War, it remained a strategic Confederate... I'm repeating what I just said. The city was a key point in General William T. Sherman's march to the sea. I don't know if everybody knows the history of that, but Sherman came through the South, I think, went through Atlanta, maybe to Augusta, and then to Savannah. Anyway, kind of just a scorched earth campaign that ultimately brought the Civil War to an end. Savannah became the first state capital of Georgia. I know Macon was a capital at one time, or maybe Milledgeville actually, which is it's a rural town at this point. So anyway, Savannah grew into an industrial center and a major Atlantic seaport, which there's a huge port here and shipping for Georgia into, I don't know exactly where everything's distributed, but there's ports all up and down the coast, but this one here in Savannah is huge and getting larger pretty much every year. All right, so I showed you Forsyth Park. It's Savannah's largest public park. 30-acre green space with a famous fountain that we looked at, walking paths and recreational areas located at the southern edge of the historic district. Savannah's historic squares are a unique urban planning feature, with many located near Forsyth Park that are scattered throughout the city's grid system and originally served as communal public spaces. Forsyth Park is the ultimate destination at the end of the park and square-filled walking tour of the historic district. The open-air hop-on, hop-off bus tour is worth it, and there are many nice restaurants, shops, bars, coffee shops, breweries. Like I said, there's a lot here. You can spend quite a bit of time walking around. And just like a last note here, when Sherman came to Savannah, he's burned most of the other cities, Atlanta and I think Augusta, and maybe even some in some surrounding states. But he found Savannah so beautiful, he decided not to burn it. But they captured it without burning it and presented it to Abraham Lincoln as a Christmas gift in December. It was December, well, I guess it would be 1864 when the war ended, so I think 1864. Hopefully we gave you a little bit to think about in Savannah if you're thinking about coming to the area. Like I said, it's on the coast here, so Charleston is to the north, Jacksonville is to the south, all places. Hadn't spent a lot of time in Charleston, but northeast Florida, South Georgia, it's there's a lot to see. Anyway, if we don't see you later, thanks for watching, and we'll keep them coming.